Our next guest has spent the last 30 years fighting for online privacy, speech rights, and just is fascinated by many of the same issues that we are at heart for. She's the author of the memoir, Privacy's Defender, My 30-Year Fight Against Digital Surveillance. And for the last 11 years, she was executive director of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, one of the oldest digital rights organizations in the world. We're so excited to have a conversation with her. Please welcome to the stage, Cindy Cohn.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Hi, Cindy.
Thank you.
I'm admiring your Let's Sue the Government shirt.
Yeah. We have the best merch at E.F.F, and I know they made this especially for me. So.
Cindy, how do we get those robot dogs banned?
They're creepy, aren't they? Oh my God.
Do you have a call you could make in DC?
You know, the thing that's creepy about them is what he said at the end, which is they're taking photos all the time and they're going to last forever, right? Yeah. This kind of creepy mass surveillance in the form of a creepy dog.
What could go wrong?
Nothing will go wrong.
It could be a reason to sue the government, which is something that you did throughout your illustrious career at E.F.F. One of your first big fights back in the 90s was defending the cryptologist Daniel Bernstein against government restrictions on encrypted source code. 30 years later, we are still seeing fights between the government and private individuals over end-to-end encryption. How surprised are you that this battle is still going on, and how would you characterize the state of that fight today?
Yeah, I mean, look, we won the first round, which means that we have Signal and we have HTTPS. And when you lose your phone, you don't lose all the data on it because it's encrypted. So, I mean, that was great. But yeah, we continue to have to fight. And we, you know, in the Meta social media case, they used the fact that they offered encryption as an argument of a product defect, right? So the fight continues. I think, you know, law enforcement's interest in making sure nobody can ever have a private conversation just never goes away. But our need to have a private conversation online doesn't go away either. So, you know, I think in the United States, we've managed to fend off, you know, there's periodically and the last bill was called Earn It, but different bills to try to, you know, restrict encryption. But, you know, the UK is a mess. Australia is a mess. We're going to have to, Canada now is debating something that Signal has said we're not going to be able to offer our product in our tool in Canada if they pass this law. So the fight just goes on. And I've kind of come to the sad conclusion that it's just something like free speech, like privacy, that we're just always going to have to stand up for.
I remember when I started covering tech more than a decade ago, the E.F.F was known for taking on the government, primarily fighting government overreach. Now you also fight big tech overreach. So I'm curious, like, did that shift come as a surprise? And where does that leave you today in terms of allies? Like, who are the good guys?
Yeah, it's... I would say in the 90s, we didn't anticipate that spying on everybody would become the number one business model of the internet.
It's very profitable.
It turns out. And it also, you know, has created this problem with the 5 big tech giants that control every, you know, the vast majority of people's experience online. And these two things together have really forced us to, you know, we don't make common cause with the tech giants anymore at the level that we used to, because they used to stand up for their users, and increasingly they're adversarial to their users. So what I tell all the tech companies is, look, if you stand with your users, we will stand with you. And if you stand against your users, we're going to be the first in line. And sadly, that second part has become bigger than I think it should. But
So
it's dragged us into these places where we're adversarial against the tech giants because they're not standing with users.
I mean, I remember, you know, Kevin and I started covering tech around the same time, and I remember, you know, whenever, you know, you guys would put out a statement, that, you know, like Google, Facebook, like Amazon were putting out statements, like you guys were marching in lockstep. You just said that united front is now broken. When did you first notice those cracks start to appear?
I mean, depends on the topic, right? The early fights, EFF was involved a lot in trying to make copyright balanced in the digital age. And we worked a lot with the companies on this because they wanted to give you the ability to make your own media and to rip, mix, and burn, those kinds of things. And we would stand with them. But I think, again, as surveillance became the business model, as they became less interested in empowering their users and more interested in their surveilling their users, we've separated. And now, we stand up for things like, the Section 230, the idea that, nobody would host anybody else's speech if they were responsible for it. So users need intermediaries to be able to speak. We've seen the tech companies roll over and support all of these exceptions, FOSTA, SESTA, and other things. And they're not even standing up for their own rights anymore. So it's really topic by topic and issue by issue. But I would say that in the last 10 years, it's less and less of the time that we end up standing with them because they don't stand with the users.
It obviously seems like that has accelerated quite a bit since President Trump was reelected. There's been a major rightward shift in some of these companies. You've talked to these people for many, many years. How much do you think that is driven by something truly ideological, and how much of it is just they think they can make more money this way?
It's hard to tell. Honestly, I don't think they're being honest with themselves, much less the rest of us, about it. And certainly not me, right? I mean, I'm the civil liberties lawyer who shows up to beat up on them. So, I don't really have the ear of the billionaires. I never count out money and maximizing the amount of money that you can make as the driver for people who have devoted their lives to making money. But I really can't tell. And I do feel like they're in their own echo chamber now in a way that wasn't true before. And so they end up not understanding how they come off and at a level that's pretty high and different than when I started out in this.
I'm curious how you feel about it. I remember in the early 2010s, I found myself, maybe somewhat embarrassingly carried away by some of the more grandiose pronouncements of these companies. They were going to organize the world's information and make it universally useful and make the world more open and connected. And while, that was always obviously self-serving in some ways, I did talk to many employees who seemed sincerely moved by that mission. And they did talk about it all the time. And so I took them to be at least somewhat sincere. I no longer take them to be sincere about that. And I wonder, did you take them at their word back then? And as the sort of truth emerged, how did you feel about it?
I mean, I think it depends on who in Silicon Valley. Honestly, I think when you're at the top of the companies, it's a whole different feeling than when you're in the middle. E.F.F has 30,000 members. I would say I don't know, we are a privacy organization. I don't know who those people are, but I think it's fair to say
that must make fundraising hell.
A lot of them are people who work in these companies who still want to be in the business of making cool stuff for the rest of us, connecting all the world's people. I mean, we did that. The internet connects all the world's people in a way that is still magnificent. So I think that the split isn't between, you're in Silicon Valley as well, but to me, it's not between tech and non-tech. It's between the top of tech, which is much more like the billionaires in any other industry and disconnected from the rest of tech. And we'll see, right? The AI founders have committed to a lot of things, Anthropic and, the 80% they're going to give away and things like that. So, time will tell, right? Are they going to walk their talk or is it just talk? And we'll just see. From E.F.F's perspective, again, if they walk their talk, we're there with them. And if they're not, we're the ones who are probably going to be on the other side of the V in the lawsuit.
Speaking of AI, there are many things to be concerned about from a privacy perspective when it comes to frontier AI systems. There's the risk of these things just becoming very charming and people entrusting them with private information, and maybe the companies not being responsible safeguards of that information. There are concerns about mass domestic surveillance that could become more salient with models that are very capable. Of all of the risks to privacy and user sovereignty posed by AI, which worries you the most?
Oh God, it's a race to the bottom, isn't it? But I would say it's not a surprise to us that the two hard lines that Anthropic drew that got them in trouble with the Defense Department is mass domestic spying and autonomous weapons. Now, I don't know as much about autonomous weapons, but I've spent my career fighting mass domestic spying, and they're right. That will change the dynamic. It will change how democracy works. This is part of the stuff I wrote about in my book, is that people with less power need privacy to have protection against people with more power. And mass surveillance supercharged by AI tends to make us a lot less powerful compared to the people who are going to know a lot about us. And that can really impact our ability to vote out the people who we don't think are leaders, control what policy and law affects all of us. The political economy questions will turn, I think, on whether we can stop mass surveillance that's AI supercharged.
Sketch out a bit how AI, For folks who may have spent less time contemplating worst case scenarios.
I know, I live there, yeah.
Can you sketch out for us a bit why AI makes surveillance particularly scary? Some folks might say, hey, I don't know, I'm already pretty scared of the FBI. What do I care if they can read my ChatGPT?
Well, I think that we're living in a time where we're seeing that if you thought you weren't ever going to be a target of surveillance, that isn't a very safe bet anymore, right? And, I think the Dobbs decision, right, overturning Roe versus Wade suddenly made a lot of people who were engaged in reproductive assistance or needing reproductive help suddenly found themselves targeted by surveillance. We've got people who've gone to jail based upon their Facebook messages. So suddenly the capabilities of surveillance of people's online activities, where they might have seemed completely innocuous and nothing that could ever be used against you, is throwing your mom in jail. Right, that happened in Nebraska. And we're seeing the same things. You may be one of the few people who knows nobody with a green card, nobody with visa status, nobody's here on a student visa, nobody here's here with undocumented, and there's nobody who you love or care about who is impacted by the fact that the government has decided that those people are in the crosshairs, or you don't want to stand with them or protest with them, which is, people who were exercising their First Amendment right to monitor the police were the two people killed in Minnesota. So, even if you're none of them, you've got to start looking. These circles are getting closer and closer to all of us. And if you think that the people in power who have control of this massive surveillance stuff will just never happen upon you or anyone you love, I think you're kind of living in a dream world. And that matters no matter what your politics is, because if this administration isn't the one that bothers you, when the administration change, it may. That's why right now Congress is debating renewing the big mass spying law, FISA Section 702. And there is this combination of Ron Wyden and Jamie Raskin, people on the left, and the Freedom Caucus, Andy Biggs and Rand Paul and Mike Lee, people who do not agree with each other very much, are all saying, look, we think the FBI needs a warrant before it starts searching the mass spying databases for its targets. It's because I think those people on the far right realize that even if they're in power today, they may not be in power tomorrow. And it's better for all of us if we have due process and separation of powers kinds of things for mass surveillance.
Yeah. You brought up how immigrants to this country who are here on various different kinds of visas might find themselves subject to mass surveillance. And in fact, we just tell people who are applying for visas, like, we are going to scan your social media. You must submit it. We are going to review the contents of your social media and judge it based on your protected First Amendment speech.
Correct. That's one of our lawsuits. We're suing over that right
So
now.
I want to talk about this because 10 or 15 years ago, this is something where I can imagine all of Silicon Valley standing up and saying, how dare you? This is outrageous. This is a clear violation of the First Amendment. They've been absolutely silent on this.
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I think you're at the New York Times. Would you go ask them for me? I don't. I mean, I think they're afraid. I think that the administration, because they depend on HB1 visas. Like, it used to be the only thing that Silicon Valley lobbied about was visas, right? That, the workforce is heavily, immigration dependent. And I agree with you. They would have been standing up for this, and they're not. And I would argue it's because they're either cowed or they're in cahoots. Those are the two reasonable options.
Cowed and cahoots, two of the worst places you can find yourself.
I think a lot of it, too, is that I don't think that there is a sense among just users of these platforms that privacy is a winnable fight anymore. I hear so much nihilism and fatalism about this when I talk to people, and they, I'm asking them about their privacy practices, and they're kind of like, well, that ship has sailed. Like, the government has all my data anyway.
Yeah.
What is the point of trying to fight? I'm sure you get this too.
Yes.
What is your response to the privacy nihilist?
I think there's a couple of things. One is that this idea that because your information's already out there, it's all over. Like, if you talk to people in intelligence or cops, they will tell you that old information it's a very short shelf life, right? So your information isn't all out there because you're continuing to live your life. And so, yes, it would have been great if 10 years ago we had passed a comprehensive privacy law that included law enforcement as well as the commercial entities. That's the first best time. The second best time is today. Because if we can begin to cut the knees out from under this massive data collection, the information will get less and less important, and their ability to spy on us will get smaller and smaller. So it's never, if it were game over, they'd stop spying on us, right? Like, they're not like, oh, we're going to unplug the spying machine because we've got everything we need, folks. Like, that would be a different world than the one we're living in. So one of the things is, like, it's never game over. It's not game over. It's ultimately game over when you're not alive anymore, maybe. But as long as you're living, your data is valuable to the government and to the companies. And the minute we stop this business model, the better. The second thing I would argue is it's easy to say it's all over and there's nothing I can do if they're not sweeping up your grandma in an immigration raid. But I think it's a bit of a denial or entitled position to think that you could not care and nothing, because what's going on there, and the nihilism is, I don't care about this. It feels like too big a fight, and nothing will really happen to me or anyone I love if I don't care about this. And I think we're living in a time where that's not a safe assumption anymore. We have to fight for our privacy.
Folks like Sam Altman have advocated for a form of privilege when you talk to a chatbot. So if you were to ask ChatGPT about a medical question, for example, Sam Altman says that information should not be sort of within the reach of law enforcement. Do you agree with that? And how much help would it do you think, if that were true?
I think conceptually there ought to be privileged places in conversations with chatbot. I'm actually a little more interested in trying to not have the companies have all that information and trackable back to you. So I'm more interested in people who are developing ways that you can have anonymity in your use of these things so that they don't have anything that they can reveal about you. And I think that's a better way to go than expecting them to stand up and protect us.
Did something happen that damaged your trust in these companies?
I mean, it's an old video of the Facebook privacy promises, right? I mean, and I'm an old lady, right? I remember when Facebook came out, they were the privacy protective social network because and then you can see their terms of service shrink over time to what they're promising you about their privacy. And, if their promises to you are up against their business model, I think you know which one is going to win. And so they're now all committed to mass surveillance as a business model. And I think that means that we need to take some policy and legal actions to try to cut that off at the knees.
I'd like to end by asking about one of the longest ongoing fights in the relationship that Kevin and I have, which is whether or not you should tweet. Kevin still tweets. I do not tweet. Recently, before you left E.F.F, you guys made the decision. You were leaving X. Tell us about that decision, and has it cost you anything?
It was a long time coming because there's plenty of people who are still on the platform who care about their rights, and it's always a hard decision because we always want to be able to talk to people who care about rights, and there are plenty of people on that platform who do. I mean, there's a couple of things that happened. We saw our reach just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking, right? I mean, there was just recently the picture of who has reach on the platform, and it's nobody who's talking about digital rights in the, on your side.
Well, that's on you guys. Have you thought about posting more beheading videos or crypto scams?
Yeah, exactly.
These things can really increase your reach.
We also were seeing a lot of, I'm also an employer. We were seeing a lot of really abusive things going to my staff and people who we talked about in our posts who, were standing up for LGBTQ, and we would post something about that. Those people would get abuse. And at some point, we just decided it wasn't worth the candle anymore, and it makes me sad because, again, I know there are plenty of people on that platform who are not hateful, but they are stuck in a place where the fundamental dynamic is really awful. And, at some point, I'm a free speech activist. Like, freedom of speech has to mean the right to leave. Like, the idea that we should be forced to speak in a place is fundamentally inconsistent with the value of freedom of speech, which includes your ability to decide where you speak in the first place. And I have a hard time with people who are like, you're a free speech organization, so you must post on this private platform. And I'm like, I don't think you know what free speech means. It means I get to decide who my audience is. And I'm sorry if you're hanging out in the Nazi bar and I decide that that's not where I want to speak. And, but I'm sad about it because there are a lot of people, there's especially a lot of politicians and other people who were trying to stop 702. There's a lot of audiences that it would be better if they weren't all on that platform.
Well, fascinating conversation. Cindy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
That was awesome. Thank you.